Welcome back to KTN News Center. Now, Tullow Oil expects to increase oil production in the early oil pilot scheme by April this year. The company says it seeks to meet a daily target of 2,000 barrels per day, up from the current 600. The company says it will increase the number of trucks ferrying the crude oil by about 100. This was said early today. Let's listen in before we talk to a business reporter, Brenda Kerubo.
Pumping stations that you need, it's the energy source that you need to heat up the pipe, is the amount of cladding or lagging that you need on the pipe. So all that piece of work is underway at the moment. Those contracts were competitively assigned, and we expect that those final reports will be done and completed by mid of this year. Okay, maybe we'll take the next set of questions, or yes, you have some additional ones to make.
So the question was that there was some discussion around revenue share with where the pipeline is going to pass. That maybe was 2 years ago. We've now finished the environmental social impact assessment, which is ongoing on that. And in discussions with the communities, that point has not come up because I think the benefits that are going to come from the Lapset corridor are a lot more than what the pipeline can supply. Then there's the question of export of crude. I think one thing that we have to understand, this is a business. That's the first thing. It's not a social project. Crude oil production is a business. So what is in the best interest of this country from a business point of view is it building a refinery? I think most of you who know about refining will know, unless you have something like 400,000 barrels per day, it just doesn't make any sense from a refining economics point of view. We've got 80,000 barrels a day. So either we give the money to a social project, or called a refinery, or we take the revenue and put it in, like you heard what the Treasury said last week, into a sovereign wealth fund, and that goes to build other infrastructure that's required. If you remember when we had the KPRL before it closed, the motorists of Kenya, were subsidizing it 2 shillings and 70 cents per litre. So I think it's not something that we want to burden the economy with. If we can get additional funds to go out and build additional infrastructure, that is more the aim. I know some people, it's anathema to have your crude exported and then you import refined product. But at the end of the day, if you can import refined product cheaper than you can refine it yourself, that's what makes more sense. So we really have to look at this thing beyond the sentimentality of having a refinery and look at it on the cold facts of how does the economy impact the economy and where do we derive the most benefit. So thanks.
Right, Tullow Oil saying it will boost oil production starting April of this year. Let's talk to a business reporter, that is Brenda Kerubo, who's joining us from a city center studio. And Kerubo, good morning. This is such good news, not only for the country, but also to residents of Turkana when it comes to sharing of revenue. And that is something that I've heard, it's being said that sharing of revenue, it will be done along the pipeline that this whole oil production will be passing through. Kindly explain for us.
Yeah, just to walk you through the revenue that you're talking about, the early oil exports, the early oil scheme that you're talking about at the moment is not necessarily dwelling on revenues, because like we started off in June 2018, it was supposed to be on a trial basis. So exactly how much can the country produce, what kind of crude do we have when it comes to comparing with other markets, and what kind of target markets are we eyeing when it comes to full exports by 2022. We are not entirely at the production sense in terms of we are exporting and selling and getting revenues in return. We're just in a testing phase whereby we are seeing crude actually moved from Ngamia and Twiga blocks back in Turkana all the way to the Kenya Pipeline Refinery Limited in Mombasa. Now the crude is being moved in form of trucks because the pipeline is yet to be constructed. But there are plans underway to construct it at least in the next 1 or 2 years so that they can make it easier to transport and also increase capacity overall.
And Kerubo, you're talking about so far currently the the oil is being transported via trucks and the construction of the pipeline is supposed to begin any time from now. How much will it cost the government to construct these pipelines?
Well, we have a consortium of international oil explorer, that is Tullow Oil. It is a British oil explorer. We also have African Oil, and we also have oil marketer Total. Now, the three companies, essentially in combination with the government, are the key players when it comes to oil production in the country. They are, of course, talking about construction of the pipeline in terms of getting the right infrastructure so that they can accommodate reserves when they are moving from the places, in this case, Turkana, all the way to Mombasa, so that they can increase capacity. Right now, we're doing about 600 barrels per day. We're targeting about 2,000 barrels per day. Now, when it comes to the amount is not yet clear because, they still have to do some feasibility studies. They still have to consult in terms of getting the right infrastructure and stuff like that. But at the moment, they are saying that should the pipeline come into play, we will see an increase in capacity, and that will mean we should be able to ship more of the commodity from the source all the way to Mombasa. And it essentially means that talking about right now of about 7 days when it comes to turnaround, moving the commodity from Gamia all the way to Mombasa, we should be looking at a shortened period of time. So it will mean more exports, which in turn overall will turn into more revenues coming 2022.
And when you talk about more revenue, Brenda, there's been a lot of questions that we're getting oil from Kenya, specifically Turkana County, but we are not able to clean up this oil so that we can use it here at home. Does the government have plans for that, or is it because we don't have the capacity as a country that we have to export the oil out of Kenya?
Well, Brenda, currently at the moment, we do not have the infrastructure that is required to refine oil and, use it essentially within the country, because that will make it cheaper. What we have at the moment is a refinery facility that was in operation up until about 2 or 3 years ago. But because of questions around, its quality, because it has been there for a long time, it needed to be refurbished. So it was closed down to enable more refurbishment to take place, construction works around it. So we really do not have the required infrastructure to process the raw form of the oil all the way to until we make it fine so that we can use it within the country. Now, compare it with a country like Nigeria, where it has been an exporter for such a long time. It has the required facility, so it makes sense for it to actually produce the oil, transform the oil and process it, and use it within the country, and also export it even as a refined substance. But Kenya is very new when it comes to oil exploration. I mean, oil was discovered in 2012, so we are now dealing with the sort of the testing phase. We can't really say how much money will our oil fetch in the international markets, which now is trading at about $64 per barrel crude oil. Tullow estimates that at around $50 per barrel, we should be having at least a decent amount of return. But at the moment, we're really basing the projections and the estimates on a trial basis. The government, through the PS, says that we are not really making money for commercial purposes. What we are doing right now is testing. We're looking at the markets, we're looking at how other players have been doing it so that we can take key lessons from the other markets. Brenda,
you're talking about the government saying that currently we're not making money out of this oil exploration in Turkana. So does it mean that residents of Turkana right now are not actually benefiting financially from this oil exploration as we speak?
From what the three consortium companies highlighted during the briefing that happened about 1 hour ago, they did emphasize that jobs have been created and amenities such as schools and health facilities have been constructed in the area. But to put it bluntly, what they did emphasize like 3 times, they did say that we are not making any money at the moment. In fact, if you look at the contract that they have about $1.5 billion that they have set aside, about $3 billion essentially that they've set aside for the whole project, and that's a lot of money. And they're saying it's going to be on a 30% equity and 70% debt. So it means that these 3 companies will essentially provide at least 30% of the required amount of the $3 billion, and the other 70% is going to come from debt. So debt in terms of they will go and try and entice key players who are likely to put in money based on the fact that they see some oil viability when it comes to the Kenyan market.
All right, thank you so much, Brenda Kiruba, business reporter, right there explaining to us what the oil production is all about when it